Good morning. Shantideva in his Bodhicharyavatara mentions that, in short, the essence of Dharma, which is the secret nature of the mind, if you do not know this secret nature of the mind, which is the essence of Dharma, then even if you want happiness and peace, and even if you wish to destroy suffering, you will end up wandering aimlessly. This is again very important point. In short, if you do not know the essence of Dharma, which is the secret nature of the mind, if you don't understand that secret nature of the mind, then even if you want happiness and try your best, even if you do not want suffering, try your best, you will end up achieving nothing. You will end up wandering aimlessly. So what is the secret nature of the mind? What is the secrecy of the mind? What do you think is the secret nature of the mind? So the secret nature of the mind could be its ultimate nature, which is lack of inherent existence of the mind. It could also be the ultimate luminous nature of the mind, the clear light nature of the mind. So what Shantideva is basically saying is, the one which throws us into hell or leads us to heaven is primarily your mind. Your mind is the key player. And if you do not know the nature of this mind, which is the key player, which is the leader, which is the boss, then you may make some attempts here and there, but you will not be able to achieve much. It's a very, very important point. So one has to always watch one's mind, guard one's mind, and see which direction it is going, whether it is going to the desired direction or undesired direction. So what this monkey mind is doing? The mind is fluctuating all the time, fluctuating. The mind is fluctuating all the time. Extremely difficult to catch hold of the mind, what it is doing. Extremely difficult to pacify it. So therefore, just like an archer or arrowsman skillfully prepares his bow and arrow, like especially if you think about bending the bow, if you use all your force and bend it, it might break you, So you need to bend it gradually and slowly. So similarly, when it comes to training the mind, you need to be systematic, skillful, and gradual. You cannot force the mind. The way you can transform your mind is come up with reasons. Come up with reasons. Explain it to the mind. So if you explain things to the mind with reason, with logic, then the mind will be able to understand it and it will appreciate. Without explanation, without reason, without logic, if you simply force your mind, do this, you cannot force your mind. With the body you can force. You can catch somebody and put it into the prison. You can beat that person physically and so on. But mind, the only way to control the mind and pacify the mind is by explaining, by showing the correct path. So for that, you need to have the knowledge, have the study. And that study also not just mugging up books, but intellectually understanding things by yourself, relating it to your own experience. Because as we all agreed right in the beginning that we all want not only peace, but the highest form of peace and happiness. So the one which disrupts or obstructs reaching that path is delusions, afflictive emotions. The mind, if you know the secret nature of the mind, you will find that the mind at its foundational level is clear light. It's unperturbed. So these negative emotions, these turbulences that we see are temporary. So if you are able to get rid of this superficial turbulences created by the mind and go to the deeper level of the mind, then you will find the genuine peace and happiness there. And in fact, that ultimate clear light mind is said to be extremely, extremely clear, penetrative and powerful. And if you, through your spiritual practice, if you are able to handle that mind, make use of that mind, and then with that subjective experience of the clear light mind, if you are able to use it through understanding the ultimate reality, like shunyata and so forth, then it is said to be extremely, extremely powerful. That is a method that is taught in Tantra. So therefore what I am saying is, all we need to do, if you don't understand so many things, all we need to do is just reduce these afflictive emotions as much as possible. Now in order to reduce these negative emotions, you need to first of all identify them. So that is what is being said in the next verse, verse number 18. Just as if the crop is covered by grass or weeds, it will be weakened by disease and will not prosper. That's why we need to do the weeding all the time. If you are to protect a flower or certain crops, you need to remove the unnecessary covering of the grass, the weeds. So similarly, the sprout of the Buddha, the bodhicitta, or the seeds of the Buddha, will also not prosper if they are covered by afflictive emotions. See, they are covered by afflictive emotions. These afflictive emotions makes you vulnerable, they make you weak, they make you fragile, as I said already. So afflictive emotions are those negative emotions which when arises in your mind makes you disturbed. So those are called afflictive emotions or negative emotions. Those emotions which when arises in your mind disturbs you. Makes you lose your stability, makes you weak. For example, if I develop anger, if I get angry, then it destabilizes me. It destroys my capacity to judge what is right and what is wrong. It destroys, as I told you earlier, the headquarters. The most important quality of the human being is the mind, the intelligence, which is the capacity to judge between what is right and what is wrong. So that intelligence is destroyed when you get angry. So when you are angry, you can't think. And you are not sure what you are saying, what you are doing. And you realize that only when the anger is over. then all the destruction has already been done. So, look at this example of anger, one particular negative emotion. It destabilizes you. It makes you vulnerable and weak. Normally when anger comes, we think it's giving us a kind of special energy. That's why many people resort to anger. And in fact, people try to justify it by saying that today I really got mad and angry and I was able to say those things which I could not say before. And I was able to do those things which I could not do before. So you think that anger was supporting you, helping you. But as His Holiness, the Dalai Lama always says, that yes, you get some kind of energy, but that energy is essentially blind energy. You got some energy, but blind energy. So you are not sure whether you will hit the target or not hit the target, whether you destroy others or destroy yourself, you see. You become completely confused, blind and mad. I was angry. I was mad with anger, as we say. I was mad with anger. See, interesting. This is a sentence that we use in our daily life. I was mad with anger. As if you are doing something good or you did something good, but you are saying, I was mad. So is it good that you become mad? See? So that is what these negative emotions do. It destabilizes you, as I said. It makes you crazy, mad. It destroys your thinking power. Now similarly, attachment. When attachment arises, it also destabilizes you. It is not very harsh and aggressive like anger. It looks okay. Anger comes with harshness, you see. And anger, when you get angry, you immediately just tell people, just go away and get lost. You reject other people. You send them away. So it's very harsh and very aggressive. So all of us can understand that easily, that anger is disturbing and it's negative. But when attachment comes, it is not harsh like that. It comes in a very friendly manner. Oh, don't worry, I love you, I'll take care of you, you know, come closer to me, you know. It's collecting, it's inviting people to come closer to you. But then that invitation, where you're asked to come together, is based on attachment. So therefore, you get obsessed with that object. Again, it destabilizes you. For example, if I get a strong attachment to somebody or to something, my mind goes there. Day and night I may be thinking about that object with which I am obsessed. See, the power of your mind is already drawn there, distracted there, you see. Destabilizes you, you see. Part of yourself is being lost now. So you're almost like this. You are almost standing like this. This is, let us say, this is an object of my attachment. So when I have this strong attachment towards this object, physically I can demonstrate by saying that I'm standing now like this. You see, I'm not stable. Very easy to fall down. You see. Which is totally different from compassion. Compassion also sends this invitation saying that I love all of you and so forth. But the reason that is being used by compassion is, I love all of you, I want to show compassion to all of you because you all want happiness, you do not want suffering, just like myself. That is how compassion and loving kindness sees. In the case of attachment, the reason you show that attachment is, I want to take care of you, or I love you because you are my brother, you are my sister, you are my husband, you are my wife, things like that. You belong to me. I am important, therefore you are attached to me, therefore you are important. Saying something like this, you see. So it's linked and related to the ego. A clear indication is that in the case of genuine development of compassion, if it is a genuine compassion, then that compassion would be there with everybody, irrespective of how they respond to you, how they behave to you. They may be bad to you, they may be good to you, but still deep down you will have that feeling of concern, sense of responsibility, sense of compassion towards everybody. Now in the case of attachment, you show that love to somebody so long as that person also loves you. As and when that person stops loving you, you also stop, you see. So in that ordinary kind of love or attachment, there is a business, as I always say, there is a business going on. You love me, I love you. That is business, you see. That's business. But genuine compassion doesn't say that. Even if you don't love me, I love you. Because I know you are exactly like me, wanting happiness, not wanting suffering. After all, when you love yourself also, the main reason is because you want happiness, you do not want suffering. That's why you love yourself, you take care of yourself. Not with any other reason. Not because you have been so kind to yourself. And you are not kind to yourself actually. You see? So therefore, as one of the English saying goes, love is not how many times you touch each other, but how many times you reach each other. There's an English saying, you see. But this Buddhist idea is perfectly expressed in this very wonderful word. Love is not how many times you touch each other. It's not so much to do with the physical attraction and physical interaction. It has to do with the mind reaching towards others, showing sense of responsibility, sense of concern, with understanding that they are all like me, wanting happiness, not wanting suffering. They all have the Buddha nature. Respecting them, loving them, helping them is not only doing something good to them, but it's basically doing good to myself. Because they all have the Buddha nature, I must respect them. As we already read, you see. If you don't be careful with how you deal with others, then it's really like handling an ash underneath where there is fire, see. It might burn you if you do something wrong with these sprouts of the Buddha, the Bodhisattvas. So therefore, negative emotions are those emotions which when arises in your mind, leaves you disturbed, agitated. So now we need to ask this question to ourselves. Do you want to get this disturbance? Do you want to get this agitation? Do you want to get this turbulence? If you don't want that disturbance, if you don't want that agitation and turbulence, then get rid of these negative emotions. Reduce these negative emotions. Reduce anger, reduce jealousy, reduce attachment, reduce hatred, and so forth. It's very interesting, this concept of dealing with negative emotions. It is destabilizing, you see, as I said. It destroys the harmony. It destroys the balance. So if you want to be strong, if you want to be famous, if you want to be successful, you don't want any of these obstructions and hindrances and disturbances. That is what the Buddhist teachings are saying. So therefore, for a Buddhist practitioner, the only enemy, and in fact the sworn enemy to fight with, is these negative emotions, and especially ignorance, which is the root cause of all these negative emotions and disturbances. So therefore he is saying, just as if the crop is covered by grass, it will be weakened by disease and will not prosper. Similarly, the sprout of the Buddha also will not prosper if covered by afflictive emotions. So therefore our job is to fight against these negative emotions. So how would you fight against these negative emotions? Ordinarily speaking, how would you fight an enemy? And how would, first of all, how would you identify somebody as an enemy? What is the definition of enemy? An enemy is somebody or someone who harms you, who harms your wealth, who harms your name and fame, who harms your relatives and friends. So those we normally say enemy, who destroys your country and so forth. So similarly, these negative emotions are definitely the enemies because they harm you, they harm your relatives, they harm your friends, they harm your country. So they are enemy. But the differences between this internal enemy and the external enemy is that the external enemies, normally we don't even make an attempt to understand them as an enemy. As and when we talk about enemy, we immediately get the idea about an external enemy. But the risk and danger is that these negative emotions, since they are part of yourself, it's difficult for you to see them as your enemies. The external enemies, how dangerous, how bad they may be, but they are coming from outside. So you can run away from them. You can fight against them. You can seek the support of more powerful, friendly countries or supporters. The negative emotions, you are protecting your negative emotions. You are protecting your enemy, especially the ringleaders of these negative emotions. Self-cherishing attitude and self-grasping mind. They are in the headquarters of your mind. Self-cherishing attitude here. Self-grasping is here. They have already seized the headquarters of your mind. Imagine if an enemy comes and seizes the headquarters of a country, the capital of a country, imagine then where that country is. It's already more or less conquered, you see. So you are more or less conquered by the negative emotions. And not only they are in the headquarters, but they are relaxing there, as His Holiness the Dalai Lama always says. They are relaxing there in our mind. They are having fun and they are enjoying and they are manipulating us. And later letting us do things in accordance with their wish. And we are helpless victims in the hands of these negative emotions. So therefore, just as we would identify external enemy, similarly we need to first of all identify these negative emotions as our enemies. As they not only our enemy, but individual enemy, but enemy of the whole world, to be honest. Because all the problems that we have in this world is because of these negative emotions. So first of all, you need to identify them as your enemies. Now, having identified these negative emotions, your enemy, the next step is to not allow them come in your mind. Just as we would not allow an external enemy to come, we'll make sure that there is a nice barricade around us. We make sure that the armies are guarding the border. Every country tries to guard their border. So similarly, we should also guard our border of our mind and body, and do not let these negative emotions come. I mean, that's not easy now. It's very difficult because these negative emotions are extremely, extremely cunning. They're extremely cunning, they are manipulative, they are opportunist. If you just lose your attention and focus even for a short time, immediately they will be there. And I have this experience, you all have this experience. I have tried it several times. It just comes like this. You have no idea when it came in you. Anger comes like that. Despite you're talking about Dharma teaching, despite you're pretending to be practicing, anger comes like that. Jealousy comes like that. Attachment comes like that. They are in us, deeply, deeply, as I said, deeply entrenched, ingrained in our whole being. So you can see, now imagine how much practice we'll be able to do. Therefore, many of the Buddhist teachers, they give this example. If you really want to make genuine progress and fight with these negative emotions, then you need to be alert all the time. And in the Buddhist texts, they give an example of somebody, a criminal who is being caught, and he is asked to carry a pot of oil that is completely full. That pot is completely brimming with oil, full of oil. He has to put that pot of oil on the head. And there stands nearby him somebody with a sharp sword ready to hit. And it says, if you make a little movement and spill one drop of oil, you will be beheaded. You will be killed. So that person will be extremely, extremely attentive. Although it's such a difficult job. But he as much as possible, he will remain attentive. Because it's a question of his life, protecting his life. So one has to be attentive to such an extent if you really want to guard these negative emotions, especially in the beginning when you are habituated with all these negative emotions and not habituated with the positive emotions. It's very difficult. For example, right now these negative emotions almost come automatically. The positive emotions, despite our making lots of attempt, it's not forthcoming, clearly showing in which area we are habituated. But it is possible that if we get habituated slowly and surely with the positive emotions, gradually it is possible to have these positive emotions come automatically and negative emotions disappear. That's also possible. It's all question of the remaining attentive, careful, mindful, and continue to do the practice. That's the only solution. So first identify these negative emotions as your enemy, as negative, as destructive, and make sure that as much as possible, make sure that they do not arise within you. So in the beginning you don't have the right to strike back, don't have the power to strike back, because your positive emotions may be weak. So at least what you should do is, there are two things we do, the defensive and the offensive strategy. So in the beginning I think it's more like defensive strategy. You defend yourself, make sure these negative emotions not invade you. And while doing so, you should strengthen your inner qualities. And then on the second step, this process of practice is very nicely explained in Aryadeva's 400 verses. In the 8th chapter, there is a verse which says, non-meritorious actions should be stopped first. So that means non-meritorious actions are negative emotions. They should be stopped, meaning they should not be allowed to arise within yourself. That's the first strategy. The second strategy is stopping the self. That means self-grasping. Self you cannot stop, there's no need to stop. Stopping the self here means developing those grasping towards the self. Because all these negative emotions have their root in the self-grasping. First you develop grasping, attachment to yourself, and then you develop attachment, grasping to what belongs to you, and thereby comes all other negative emotions. And then thirdly, you should even remove the grasping towards the rest of the phenomena. So in this way, you should slowly destroy the negative emotions, their seeds, and even their imprints. So those kinds of systematic process of fighting against the negative emotions is explained in Aryadeva's 400 verses. So this is very, very important practice. Of course, there are certain areas which we need to think. Like, for example, according to science, anger, desire, attachment, they are by nature, they are necessary for our survival. Fear, anger, kind of desire, they are necessary for our survival. That's what the science say. But in Buddhism we say anger is bad, attachment is bad. So we need to do a little bit thinking there. For example, according to science they say, for example, fear, when there is a threat to your life, immediately a signal is sent to the brain. And then you develop the fear. As soon as you develop the fear, the blood rushes down to the foot, to the legs, which enables the legs to move, to run away fast from that source of threat and danger. So fear is important. Similarly, desire, anger, many of these things are necessary for your survival. That's what they say. But this should not be seen as contradicting to Buddhist teaching. Little bit of these natural gifts may be necessary for your own survival. But if you go beyond what is needed, if you intensify all these negative emotions, then they become extremely, extremely destructive. That we all know very clearly. Okay? And then also what the science is explaining is, it has no ethical background. It's simply talking about how things survive, not only human beings, but even trees, how they survive. So as they have found, they just explain, okay, for survival these things are necessary. But what is taught in Buddhism is, your being able to survive may not necessarily be something great. But the question is, how will you survive? Okay. So in Buddhism there is this ethical approach, where you don't only talk about existing, but living. There's a difference between existing and living. It's not important that you're existing, but you should be living. So living a life is different from existing or existence. And especially we do not live in vacuum. We live in relation with other people, other sentient beings. So naturally we have to have this system. You call it ethical discipline or whatever you want to call it. We need a proper way of life, which is helping and which is not harming others. Verse number 19. What is the state of purification of the body? It is thorough purification of evil deeds and afflictive emotions. The completely awakened and purified one said, in the absence of effort, one will go to bad states of existence. So when we talk about this purification of the body, it is not so much about how clean your body is, how many times you have washed yourself. It's not talking about that. It's talking about, as these are very interesting points, you see. We wash our body with water so many times, but we never wash or purify our body from the contaminations of wrongdoings and afflictive emotions. We are very good in doing all these external activities, external rituals. That's why people get so attracted to rituals. Because rituals you can just do something, you can see, you can observe other people's do. And in many cases when you observe other people doing something, you don't even have to make an effort. So you're just an spectator. It's fun to watch those things. But when you personally do this self-purification of removing the negative emotions, then you need to make some effort. And without that you will not be able to cleanse yourself. So imagine somebody wearing a very nice cloth, very handsome, very beautiful, looking so nice, but full of negative emotions. In the true sense of the term, that person is not handsome, not beautiful, ugly person. We use that, fortunately we use that word in our ordinary language also. A very mean, ugly person, See. And as His Holiness always says, that when you are kind, even though physically you may be bent, and you have all yellowish broken teeth, but still you smile, His Holiness says it's really nice. See? So the most important quality is the inner quality. That's why he's talking about purification of the body in the sense of purification of wrongdoings and afflictive emotions. And purification of wrongdoings and afflictive emotions will not come automatically. You need to make effort. That is what the Buddha said. The completely awakened, purified one, that is the Buddha said, in the absence of effort, if you don't make the effort, you will not be able to purify these wrongdoings and negative emotions, and as a result, you will go to negative state of existence. This law of nature, this is what we need to understand. It is not that somebody called Buddha is sitting there and judging whether you are doing good thing or bad thing, and if you are doing good, oh, go to heaven, or you are doing bad, go to hell. He is not making any judgment. It's law of nature, that's what we need to understand. In the Western philosophy, even in the Western philosophy, a research has been done long past with this question of doing good things. And then in that context, a question is raised by saying, how this so-called good thing become good? When you say, do something good, or this is good, how that thing can be identified as something good? Is it because the God said this is good, or Buddha said this is good, or by nature it's good? It's good to everybody. Two very important questions. If it is good because somebody said it is good, then that's not applicable to everybody. Number one, it is applicable to only believers and followers of that religion. And that also has the bigger implication that anybody can make anything good by thinking so. So then in that case, how can you come up with a foundation for ethical discipline, a universal foundation for ethical discipline? How will you come about that? You will not be able to come about that. That's why His Holiness is talking so much about secular ethics. And he wrote this book, Beyond Religion. He himself is a religious practitioner, Buddhist practitioner. But he said this is not enough for everybody. Because when you follow a particular religion, whether you like it or not, you create a boundary. And His Holiness says, in order to ensure this universal ethics, the secular ethics, you need to come outside that boundary, beyond religion. Something that is good for everybody. By using your common experience, by using your common sense, by using scientific findings. If it is good for everybody, that we should follow it. I mean, what the Buddha taught is actually that universal ethics. But still, again, it has the title Buddhism, so people think that this is again a religion, so they are running away from it. That's why Again, there is possibly a boundary. But what the Buddha actually taught is for all sentient beings, a morality that is applicable to all sentient beings, to everyone who desires peace and to who does not like suffering. This is a very interesting thing that I was reading in Western philosophy, that whether something is good because God said it is good or it's good for everybody. So we need to do something or those things which are good for everybody. Which is universally good. Okay. You must therefore put effort into purifying your evil deeds. And what is evil deed? Evil deeds are those deeds which directly, indirectly harm others and afflictive emotions. Otherwise you will go to negative states of existence. To purify evil deeds, you should practice the 4 opponent powers. One process of fighting against these negative emotions I have already explained to you. And another very common explanation that is taught is relying on the 4 opponent powers. That means having committed a negative action, cultivated negative emotion. The first opponent is having cultivated a negative emotion, having done something wrong, you should regret. You should regret and realize that it was wrong. It was unhealthy. So regret must be there. Now the word regret is not equal to feeling guilty, which has a different connotation in some other tradition. So in Buddhism, when we talk about developing regret, we are not saying, oh, you did this thing, you're a bad person, now you cannot improve, you cannot change, you will go to hell. We are not talking about those things. The famous practitioner Milarepa, in one of his poems, he says, if you are somebody who is genuinely interested in purifying negative emotions, then the best way of removing this negative emotion is to confess and to regret that it was wrong. That's the first step to bring about change, to become different, regret that it was wrong. Instead, if you remain stubborn, obstinate, and cling on to the wrongdoing and try to justify it, then the situation becomes much, much worse. Then the fruits will be much, much stronger. Negative fruits will be much, much stronger. So therefore, having done something wrong, it's important to recognize that wrongdoing as wrongdoing and regret over it, that it was wrong, it was a mistake. Regret it. Then having regretted, the next opponent is make a promise that I will not repeat this again. That is the second opponent. Just like poison. You may take poison either because you do not know that it was poison, or you may knowingly take that poison because you have not seen the effect. The 2 possibilities. So whatever be the case, having taken poison, you start suffering. You had this experience of suffering because of poison. Then next time you will be careful, or you regret that you have taken poison. That's important. You need to, first of all, understand poison as disturbing, that the poison creates pain and suffering. You need to understand that, as I told with the afflictive emotions. And then somehow if you had taken poison, you regret and you understand that it's a mistake. So that has to be there. And then second, definitely you will never take that poison again. Make a promise that I will not do this again. And then especially make an effort to counteract against those negative emotions. That is developing the positive counter forces. That is the third practice. That means, for example, if you are somebody who has excessive attachment towards, say, a person or an object, then you should meditate on its positive counter force, which is seeing the ugliness of that object. So therefore, in Buddhist practice, we have many meditations where we see that object of attachment as nothing but a skeleton, nothing but a rotten corpse or whatever, you see. So there are different ways that it's impermanent, it's fleeting, it is not reliable. Even in the case of the food that you take, for survival you need it, but don't take food with attachment, with obsession, with compulsion, with the realization that this food is not going to make me cleaner. I think this food is not going to give me the long-lasting, reliable peace and happiness, with those realizations. But you need it simply for survival. And there are many things that we do which may not be even needed for survival. See? So you make those efforts and try to cultivate those positive counter forces, especially of those negative emotions, which is a more predominant presence in you. Like, for example, we have so many, in one person we have so many negative emotions. So you need to find out of many of these negative emotions, which is most disturbing, which is a most dominant presence in you. You need to find that out, because that is much more disturbing because of its overwhelming presence. So, for example, if you are somebody, if out of many negative emotions that you have, that you are somebody who is much more susceptible to anger, a very hot-tempered person, then develop counterforce against that. Not only with you, if you understand these techniques, you will also know how to treat others. For example, there is in this same text, shikshasamuchaya, Shantideva says, if you are dealing with a very hot-tempered person, angry person, then you need to do something that is fun and that makes him cheerful and happy, you see. Give him some nice food, say some, interesting things, So that's the way, because he's already very harsh and very aggressive. If the person with whom you are dealing is somebody who has obsessive attachment, then you need to be a little bit harsh and make that person do a lot of activities, things like that. So depending upon whichever of these negative emotions has a more predominant presence in you, you need to identify it and find the right counter forces. And then, fourthly, the fourth counter force is taking refuge to Buddha, Dharma and Sangha. Taking refuge in bodhicitta. Just as when you fall down on the ground, you need to get up by seeking the support from the ground itself. So similarly, we commit many wrongdoings in relation to these objects of refuge, Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, Bodhisattva and so forth. So we need to rely on them, seek their guidance, seek their support, seek their blessing. And if you resort to this practice of cultivation of the four opponent powers, it is said that there is no negative emotion which cannot be purified, that you have accumulated in the past. However negative, that the negative emotions may be, but if you wholeheartedly resort to these four positive counter forces, they can all be purified. So therefore you can see one great quality or one good quality with these negative emotions. So far we have been talking all the bad things about negative emotions, but the negative emotions have one great quality. That great quality is, if you purify it, you can purify them. If you make an effort, you can get rid of them, they'll go away. Okay? But that is not easy. Again, you have to constantly work. So that is what is said in the next verse, which basically talks about practices of patience, effort and concentration. Have patience and seek to listen, then stay in the forest, make effort in meditative equipoise, and meditate on ugliness and so forth. So see, this just one verse is talking about 3 of the 6 perfections. Have patience. In life you need patience. Without patience you will not be able to achieve anything in life. That's the rule of the game. And especially if you are a Buddhist practitioner and wants to confront these negative emotions and get rid of these negative emotions, then there must be perseverance. There must be patience. If you make just a short-lived attempt and expect that all these negative emotions will go away with few days practice, few days meditation, or going for one session of teaching from however high the Lama may be, then that is wrong. That is wrong. So you need to have patience. And with that patience, you need to make effort. Now when we talk about patience, that means we encounter in our life lots of harms from people, from environment. So many harms are there. From insects, from mosquitoes, so many harms are there that irritates us, that bothers us. Have patience with those things. And then we also encounter a lot of sufferings. Sufferings of physical headache, mental unhappiness, so many sufferings. Passing away of one of your family member, whatever, so many, countless sufferings. Have patience with those things by understanding the reality and the impermanence of everything. And then have patience when you make attempt to understand the Dharma. You need to have some patience. And then seek to listen. That means make effort to listen to the teaching. Seek to listen is talking about making effort. That you make effort to listen to the teaching. Then after you have been patient, and when you worked hard, you made effort to understand the meaning of the teaching, having listened to the teaching, then stay in the forest, because then you have something to meditate. Going to the forest is not easy. You cannot just go there and sit there, Many cows are doing that. Many animals are doing that. Birds stay in the forest, but they don't achieve anything. And in fact, Marvalosawa, an example is given in relation to Marvalosawa. In one of the Buddhist teaching, it says, if you practice, even if you remain as a householder, there is nirvana. There is nirvana. It is possible to achieve nirvana. Just as has been done by the many past Tibetan kings, ministers, like Marvalosawa. If you don't practice, even if you stay high up in the mountain, you will achieve nothing, just like the marmot, the animal which sleeps high up in the mountain for 6 months or so at a stretch, but they don't get anything. So therefore, in order to go high in the mountain remain in isolation, there must be something to practice. So having prepared the material for your meditation, then you go to the forest because there will be less disturbance, there will be less distraction. And even if you go into the forest, my teacher, who passed away a long time back, in the very beginning, when we were in the Institute of Buddhist Dialectics, many of us were very enthusiastic. Probably I don't belong to that extremely enthusiastic group, but there were some who said, "Oh, we want to go to the mountain to do meditation." So my teacher used to scold them by saying, "What are you going to meditate? No, nothing. What are you going to meditate?" So that's the thing, when you have nothing, you just go there, maybe recite some mantra. I mean, it's okay, good, but it will not be so effective. So having reached, so he used to say, "What are you going to meditate?" In fact, without any subject matter to meditate, if you just go out into the mountain, you will do more thinking about the worldly things than when you are with the worldly people. When you are with the worldly people, you are part of them, there's no need to think much about them, you see. It's exactly like the English saying, absence makes hearts grow fonder. So when you are absent from the rest of the world, stay in the mountain, you have all those past experiences, you may be physically sitting there, but your mind may be thinking everything about what is happening down in the valley, you see. So that is not good. That is not good. So having remained in the forest, make effort in meditative equipoise, because your mind is not in equipoise. It is imbalanced, so balance it. And how would you do that? Meditate on ugly. If you are somebody whose main meditation is developing, removing attachment, then meditate on ugliness, depending upon whatever is your focus of meditation. One who experiences many continuous sufferings, see, this is the thing. One who experiences many continuous sufferings. Now, if we ask this question to ourselves, are you among those who is experiencing continuous sufferings? Most of us will say no, because we are thinking only about the physical levels of sufferings, you see. But if you go a little bit deeper, not only suffering of suffering, but suffering of change, even if you are unable to go to that level of conditioned suffering, which is the subtlemost suffering, but even if you go to the second level, suffering of change, then you can say that we are all continuously suffering. See? So that's why, again, in-depth knowledge of these different levels of sufferings is extremely important. One who experiences many continuous sufferings and wishes to protect themselves from moral corruption, because moral corruption leads to those sufferings, and attempt to eliminate hindering karmic obstructions, they should attempt to purify their afflictive emotions, because afflictive emotions are responsible for cultivating those karmic obstructions and moral corruptions. For that, first one should have patience. Because if one is intolerant, one will not be able to invigorate or strengthen the dampened spirits, and thus one's efforts in listening and so on will decline. Without listening to the teaching, one will not know the methods of concentration and the ways to purify afflictive emotions. Therefore, without low spirits, one should seek to listen to the teaching. As I said, listening to the teaching is just like burning a butter lamp in darkness. Listening dispels darkness of the mind. Even when one knows these methods, it will be difficult to engage in meditative equipoise through mixed behavior, you see. One day you do this, the next day you do this, So the suffering that you are experiencing is continuous. The afflictive emotions that you are experiencing is continuous. But if the antidote against these afflictive emotions and sufferings are not continuous, then it's clear you will not be able to remove them. So therefore, if you live a mixed behavior, you see, that means there should be total concentration and dedication. Therefore, remain in the forest. Even in the forest, without effort towards removing distractions, because mind, again, you need to be very watchful, because physically you may be there, the mind can go to any length, to anywhere. The mind will not stay in meditative equipoise, so one must make an effort in meditative equipoise. The result of meditative equipoise will be only purification of afflictive emotions and nothing else. Therefore, meditate on ugliness and so on. Practice of wisdom. Cultivation of wisdom is done by meditating on selflessness of the person. So, practice of wisdom. Wisdom here is referring to understanding emptiness. With regard to emptiness or selflessness, we talk about two types of selflessness: selflessness of person and selflessness of phenomena. So cultivation of wisdom is done by meditating on selflessness of the person. Now meditation on the selflessness of the person is done through the practice of the four foundational mindfulness. That is mindfulness of your feeling, mindfulness of your body, mindfulness of your mind, and mindfulness of the Dharma or phenomena in general. And this is explained in detail in Dharma Samgraha Sutra, Arya Ratanakuta Sutra, and so forth. And by meditating on the selflessness of phenomena through the six constituents, as this is explained in the meeting of the Father and Son Sutra, Pita Putra Samagam Sutra. So basically it is saying that you need to constantly watch yourself, what kind of feelings are coming up. That's called mindfulness of feeling, whatever. Positive feeling, negative feeling, neutral feeling, what kind of positive feelings are coming up. And then stop those that are destructive and cultivate those which are positive. So similarly, mindful of your body, and most importantly, mindfulness of your mind. The distinct practices of the six perfections, purification of resources. It should be known that purity of resources is achieved by training in right livelihood. We touched on this point earlier also. So here it says, purity of resources is achieved by training in right livelihood. This should be known as mentioned in the caution of the householder Rudra, where it says, householder, a lay bodhisattva should seek resources in harmony with religious practice and not through irreligious means. They should be sought through appropriate means and not through inappropriate means, through right livelihood and not through wrong livelihood. So what is right livelihood? Right livelihood means you should get rid of the 5 ways of wrong livelihood. The 5 ways of wrong livelihood are: number 1, hypocrisy. Hypocrisy, that is to pretend what you are not. For example, in order to get something from you, if I adopt a very hypocritic style and pretend that I have this realization, that realization, and so on, then if you start believing in me, many people are very gullible, unfortunately. That's why many of these fake sadhus and lamas or whatever, they're all mushrooming. They get this opportunity to flourish, you see. And you see this on the television. How many of them just and leading that hypocritical life and rolling in wealth. People believe in that, see. People are very gullible. And then that's why, again, there is more reason to show compassion to people, how vulnerable they are. You see. So hypocrisy, pretending what you're not. And through that way, if you get your livelihood, that is one form of wrong livelihood. Then second kind of wrong livelihood is flattery, that you go somebody and flatter, say something nice to that person. Oh, how nice you are, these days you look so nice, and whatever, you say many good things so that you are able to get something from that person. Flattery. This also I have seen in the case of many people, you see. They have a benefactor, they have a sponsor. So in many cases, of course, you must remember the kindness and thank. If you go with that motivation, probably it's not flattery. But some people, just to get something from that person, they're so good in flattering that person. And through their way they get what they want. There's second kind of wrong livelihood. Third kind of wrong livelihood is insinuation, probably is the right word. Insinuation probably is the right word. I don't remember the meaning so clearly. So it's really like hinting, hinting to get something. You don't say it directly that you want, you need it, but you hint, and then through that way you try to get it. So that's also wrong livelihood. And then third is finding material gifts by giving material gifts. That means if you want to get something bigger, you need to give something smaller. Give something small, with the hope you will get something bigger. You see. So seeking material goods through material goods. And the fifth one is taking forcibly from somebody who is weaker than you, lower than you. For example, in the case of a teacher with the students, you can say, oh, this pen you are writing is so nice, I really like that pen. And then I take it forcibly, or if you say, oh, Geshe, take this pen, I take it, you see. So that's also wrong livelihood. You use your power, you see. And many people do that. Many people do that. In the case of hinting and insinuation also, it is said that if you like this jacket, this he is wearing, this jacket, then I have to go there and say, oh, this jacket really so nice. Then I touch it, must be very warm, like this, Then he might say, oh, Geshe, just take it, So that's hinting, You don't say directly, but I wish I have one like this, almost saying things like that, you see. So you need to be very, very careful. And many of this can be included as stealing. The Buddhist connotation of stealing is not only taking things which is, stealthily, not taking things stealthily as we normally understand, but stealing means taking things which are not given to you. So people don't want to give something and somehow you get it, then it's stealing. Okay. Purification of the positive deeds. Cultivating emptiness with the essence of compassion, merits will be purified. So if you want to purify or enhance your positive deeds, then the most effective practice is the development of compassion and wisdom together. And that, in fact, is the heart of the Buddhist teaching. And in order to enable any positive practice to become transcendental, it should be influenced by non-grasping wisdom and compassion. Meaning that if you transcend this worldly existence and achieve higher states like liberation and so on, then it's not enough that you have compassion, but you should be able to influence that compassion with wisdom which sees things as having no intrinsic or inherent existence. And in fact, it is this cultivation of wisdom which is antidote to ignorance, which is the root cause of samsara, root cause of suffering. Okay? So by removing and eradicating that ignorance, that misconception of reality, you will be able to go beyond the worldly existence. You will be able to transcend it. Any questions? Yeah.
In the beginning of your discourse, you talked about, you actually quoted Shantideva, and you said there's no enlightenment without discovering the secret of the mind. And you established that the secret of the mind was actually two different phenomena. One was the empty nature of the mind, which is a permanent phenomenon. And the other one was the luminosity of the mind, which is an impermanent phenomenon. Can you help me understand the distinction between the two? How can both be the secret of the mind?
They are secret in the sense because they are not so easy for us to understand. In that sense. We are not talking about something that we can never understand, but they remain secret to us. Because we don't bother to understand the ultimate nature of all phenomena, and especially with the mind, I would say. Because the mind is something that is non-physical. And what is non-physical to you is much more difficult to perceive. That's why Buddha had to come up with comments by saying the mind does not exist in mind because the nature of the mind is clear light, luminous. He had to make this comment, the mind does not exist in mind because the nature of the mind is luminous. The mind does not exist in mind because the nature of the mind is clear light. So by this what he's saying is, of course the mind exists is in mind, because this cup exists on this cup. Because if this cup does not exist on this cup, there's no way I can perceive this cup. The fact that I'm able to perceive this cup means the cup is existing. There is a cup on this. I'm not saying two cups, but there is a cup here. So similarly, in that sense, in the conventional sense, the mind is there. But the mind does not exist in mind means there is no mind which has intrinsic, independent existence. Such a mind will not be found there in that ordinary mind which you perceive. And the reason is because it's clear light. Meaning it is unconditioned, it is changing. If it is intrinsic, independent, inherent, it should not change, it should be permanent. See? Okay? So therefore, but the main factor is in both the cases, I mean this description that the secrecy of the mind, meaning the lack of inherent existence of the mind, that is very clearly explained in the Shantideva's Bodhicharya Avatara. But the second one, that the luminous nature of the mind could also be termed as secret, is my invention. I'm saying that because I think in both the cases they are not really easy for us to understand and discover. So from that part, yeah.
Is this distinction related to the Ramtong, Shantong?
No. Just the standard Madhyamika explanation, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah.
You talked about self-purification as well as ritual purification.
Yeah.
And I'd like to know what the connection is between ritual purification and self-purification, especially as somebody who comes from the West where we don't have a lot of rituals, so...
Which is good. Which is good. But even this word ritual, in Tibetan we call it choga. The English word you use is ritual. The word choga has a very interesting connotation. Choga means a method, a way, a means. So it could be many different types of ways and means. It could refer to many types of ways and means. So ritual in that sense is not necessarily not so good or things like that. But if you use the word ritual in the sense of using these external implements and external performances and practices, then I would say the purification, the mental purification which you do through your personal effort by removing afflictive emotions and so on is the most important purification. And the external purification is dependent on the power of that person who is doing that purification, number one. So unfortunately, most of the people I would say do not have much power. I'm sorry to say that. I'm a little bit revolutionary here. Revolting here a little bit. But then I would not go to the length of saying that these external rituals of no benefit at all. Because it's again related to the mind, you see. When your mind is ready, when your mind is accepting that it will be useful, well, there will be some good imprint, positive imprint, you see. So that will be there. But then you need to remember this very important teaching that the Buddha himself had very clearly given by saying, in one of his own sutra, he says, the Buddhas do not wash the evil deeds of sentient beings with water. The Buddhas do not remove the sufferings of sentient beings with their hands. The Buddhas do not transfer their realization or knowledge into the minds of the sentient beings. The Buddhas only show the path of truth, the path of suchness. So it's clearly said in that sutra itself that even in the case of the Buddha, he cannot completely purify you. You need to do the homework. The Buddha is just a teacher. He shows the path. You need to do the hard work. So that's more important. Yeah.
Can I ask you then a second question that's related to the first? Would you consider is the recitation of mantra a ritual, or is
it's a ritual, as I said, in accordance with the Tibetan term, it's a ritual. But this English word ritual, I don't know what is the actual meaning. Okay, we stop here then. Just dedicate the merit that we have earned for the long life of His Holiness Dalai Lama and other great teachers of all religions, and also long life of all the good people living on this earth. May they achieve success in their endeavor and fulfill their prayers. Thank you.